Hello again, everybody. This is Steve. I've kind of drug my feet a little bit on getting this out here. I wanted to get it out sooner, but I ran into a couple snags along the way with just wasn't feeling it. I've been doing some praying and seeking counsel of the Most High and asking for His Ruach to direct me in this, and I've kind of went in the direction that I feel like I'm being led to do this. I'm getting a lot of information. I do a lot of research, and I've got a lot of people that I trust that I've been following for quite a few years, and it's looking like things are getting pretty bad in this country. They're going to probably have to take down the internet. And then there's something that Celeste Solum on Diamond Disc, ex-NSA, or I think it was Homeland Security, and she quit because of her insight to what was coming. But anyway, they're going to have to shut us up. There's too many people that are getting pretty riled up right now, and I think at the end of this video I might just show you a clip from Brian at High Impact Vlogs, his latest video. It's getting pretty scary, so I want to try to give you some basic principles, that foundational principles that you can use to understand what's going on. And if we don't have a quote-unquote remedy that we can file and get these people to go away and get out of the system on a formal level, maybe we can do it on an informal level and at least get our minds and our hearts right with Yahuwah. Because, the way things are going, we could be standing in front of Him before we know it. This seems to be accelerating. So we're going to talk a little bit about jurisdiction. And I've been harping on everyone needing to know who they are. Because if you know who you are, you'll understand whose jurisdiction you are under. Now, the definition of jurisdiction, this is from Merriam-Webster's online dictionary. It's the power, right, or authority to interpret and apply the law to a matter that falls within the court's jurisdiction. Okay, well, that doesn't really tell us a whole lot. The authority of a sovereign power to govern or legislate. That gives us a little bit more insight there. Or B, the power or right to exercise authority, control. So 2 is giving us a really good idea of what jurisdiction is. 3, the limits or territory within which authority may be exercised. So 2 and 3 we need to keep in mind here, and I'm not going to give you a legal definition of jurisdiction because this really covers it, and I don't want to get really deep in some of those areas. We're going to be covering some principles of logic and of logical reasoning here. This one is the law of non-contradiction, and it's very basic. And what it is, it says a thing either is or it's not. Okay, it either is or it isn't. It cannot both be and at the same time and not be in the same state. It cannot both be and not be. I mistyped that. Oh well, you get it. A thing either is or is not. It can both be and not be at the same time and in the same state. So I left a couple words out there. Okay, so let's take a look at what Yahuwah tells us here. And let's lay some groundwork. We'll lay a little foundation. In Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth." Now there's a maxim of law that says he who creates a thing owns it. Okay, now keep that in mind, because Elohim is the one who created, so he's the one who owns. And here we're going through another type of logical reasoning. This form is called a syllogism. We'll cover it a little bit. But we're going to take a look at a couple of points, and then we're going to come to a conclusion. There's a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. Number 1, Elohim made everything that exists. Number 2, the maxim of law that says whoever makes owns. Therefore, Yahuwah owns everything. So can there be any higher jurisdiction than that of Yahuwah Elohim? No, there can't. There cannot be. He either allows a thing to happen or he causes it to happen. So everything that's happening right now, he's allowing. And Isaiah 45:7 says he creates light and dark and evil and good. Now, evil in that context means consequences. And I'm not going to break all that down for you. You can do that yourself. Isaiah 45:7. The foregoing slide uses a tool of critical thought called a syllogism. It consists of two or more assertions called premises to reach a conclusion. If the premises are valid, it follows that the conclusion must be true. Now, this is a practical application of logic to critical thinking, and it's a very valuable skill to have, which allows one to consider a complex issue by proving its relevant parts. And see, that's the thing with critical thinking. You don't just regurgitate things that you hear. You analyze the component pieces of that thing. What's being asserted? Is there any evidence to those assertions? Are they more likely true, more likely not? And you come to understand more about whether a thing is going to be true or false just by using a certain thinking process. And I'm going to try to introduce you to that as we go through these things here. We've already established that Yahuwah made everything, therefore he's the boss, and he's got the superior jurisdiction. And I could really stop this video right here, but there are some more points that I felt compelled to make. And this might be a little longer than I've been doing lately, 20-25 minutes. This might be a little longer, but once we get through the slideshow, the rest will just kind of be, if you want to stick around for it, great. If not, I understand. So let's continue with this. And Yahuwah Elohim formed man out of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. That's Genesis 2:7. So, who owns man? Now let's apply what we've already learned on critical thinking. Yahuwah formed him out of the dust of the ground and breathed life into him, and he who creates owns, therefore he owns us. We are his property. Whoever creates owns. Yahuwah created man, therefore man is Yahuwah's property. And now that here on this slide, I've put it into the form of the syllogism. 1, the major premise. 2, the minor premise. And 3, the conclusion that must follow, logically follow from the premises. And most people don't think about this, but they've done this type of reasoning all their lives to a degree. But once you have an understanding of what you're doing, it's kind of like it's an if-then analysis. Well, if this, this, and this, then that. But when you wrap your mind around about, oh, it is actually a formal process that one can employ, one can make a conscious effort to employ, then, you've got a tool. You've got a great tool in your toolbox to understand whether or not somebody's feeding you a line, or whether or not, well, this is probably more true than not, So it's important. This is a very, very important point that I hope everybody grasps, because there's so much disinformation out there right now, and there's so many things going on. I'm seeing people who are awake that aren't getting it. They're not as awake as they think they are, because I watched somebody. I'm not going to put them out there like that. But I watched somebody that I've been following for a very, very long time. Actually, two people. They were interviewing each other, and they were talking about what's going on, and they were talking about like it's going to just all go bye-bye eventually. Oh, one of them said it may take 10 or 20 years or longer for this all to get back to normal, and they don't realize that what's going on right now. We know that there's an end time coming. There's judgment coming upon this world. And the judgment comes because of the wickedness. Now, with that said, I'm going to digress for a moment and say, I've been going through some turmoil today, and I've learned a big error that I've been making for years. I started trying to study this in 1981. And I started in, about 2003, 2004, I started getting some big pieces of the puzzle. Keeping Sabbath, holy days under a congregation that didn't have some stuff right. Did that for a long time, fell away for a while, and I'm not even sure when I actually got into using the correct names, 2013, 2014, sometime in there. And I've gotten more and more pieces of the puzzle. And just today, I got a big piece of the puzzle. It's got me very concerned about my own well-being. If I have dropped the ball, irreparably, I'm counting on Yahuwah's mercy in this area and in many areas, because you know I've lived my life, you know, indulging the flesh, chasing after the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, you know, being prideful. There's so many things wrong with me, and I deserve everything that's coming on the earth. I really do. There's nothing I could ever do to make up to Yahuwah and to pay the debt that I owe him for the sins that I've committed. And that's the beauty of Yahuwah, that he sent his son. He sent his son to pay a debt that we couldn't pay. And you know, he tells us in the kind of the outline prayer. See, the Lord's Prayer is not the model prayer. The model prayer, I think, is John 17. It's the only place I know of that really breaks down, and we get to listen to Yahusha talking to his Father, and I think that teaches me a lot more about it. But in the Lord's Prayer, it's like an outline. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, or forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Now, in law, debt and trespass are the same thing. It's a trespass to be in debt, okay? And that, I think that's by design. It's not a mistake, because we're living out. How do I put this into words? We're living out the whole process that's laid out in the Bible. You know, we're going through all of these steps, and it's the word of Yahuwah is a practical guide to how we live our lives. You know, so I'm looking for forgiveness, and I've got a lot to be forgiven for. Therefore, I've got to be willing to forgive. You know, and I've got to be willing to forgive me too. I still struggle with that one. I just can't quite turn loose of everything and forgive me. And you know, that's very, very hard. But with what I'm going through right now with all of this, I would ask each and every one of you to pray for me as I pray for all of you. So with that said, let's move on. So critical thought in a nutshell. The law of non-contradiction. A thing either is or it's not. Plus the syllogistic reasoning. You know, got a couple or three premises. If a conclusion follows from those premises, that equals a high probability of a thing being true. So now if there's any interruption in that chain right there, if you've got a couple of premises that are, yeah, those are most likely true, I'm not so sure about this one, you know, then you know that, well, that might negate the conclusion I would draw off the first two. But you start thinking and engaging in your thought process, not just hearing something and then turning around and regurgitating it without giving it any thought. There's too much of that going on right now, and we can't afford that. Time is short. We need to get on the ball and do what we can do. Because I'll tell you what, it could get rough. It could get rough in the days coming. And, you know, we want to prepare to meet our Maker. We want to do everything we can do to get our life right. And therefore, I can't afford to follow anything any man says. So, and I guess that is pretty much the slide. That couldn't be the slideshow. Oh, here we go. Now the serpent was more subtle than any of the beasts of the field. Genesis 3:1. Okay, we're going to use this again. And I'm picking and choosing. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. The serpent was subtle. And subtle is sly, artful, cunning, crafty, insinuating, as a subtle person, a subtle adversary. And we know he is an adversary. In fact, the word Satan means the adversary. Okay, 5, and this is from Webster's. I started out with definition number 5, so there's 3 more before this, but they didn't really apply. 5 is planned by art, deceitful, as a subtle scheme. 6, deceitful, treacherous. 7, refined, acute, as a subtle argument. So he's pretty crafty when he approached Eve. And, you know, something took place in the garden. I'm not going to speculate on what it was, if they ate an apple, if, you know, if there was some relationships that went on between Eve and the serpent and all that. You know, that's irrelevant. You know, that's just feeding man's pride. Oh, gee, I know a little bit more about this than you do. No, that's not it. We got to look at at what the relevant facts that have a meaning to us are. And the fact that the serpent is sly. He's slick. Okay, and we're going to go over to Genesis 3 and look at verses 14 and 15 and their relevant parts. And here again, I'm skipping a bunch of this, but this is where Adam and Eve are facing up to Elohim. Okay? And the curses are being put upon them for their disobedience. And when he gets to the serpent, it says, and Yahuwah Elohim said unto the serpent, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So, now everybody always talks about this as being the first prophecy about Yahusha. Okay? And he's going to get his heel bruised when he bruises Satan's head. And that is true. That's what that's about. But there's more information in there if we look at it. It says there's going to be enmity between the woman and the woman's seed. Okay? And Satan's going to be able to cause some harm to the seed of woman. And I believe that means Yahusha, and it also means those of us who have to go through the tribulation. And even those who have passed on before the tribulation, who lived full lives. Satan has bruised everybody's heel. Throughout time, Satan has brought so much evil into this world. Okay, so now with that said, let's take a look at enmity. The quality of being an enemy. And here again, this is from Webster's. This is from the 1828. And my internet was down, so I had to actually type this in. So, the quality of being an enemy. The opposite of friendship. Ill will, hatred, unfriendly dispositions, malevolence. It expresses more than an aversion, denoting a fixed or rooted hatred. I will put enmity between thee and the woman. Genesis 3. The other example that Webster gave was the carnal mind is enmity against Elohim. Romans 7. Okay, now, if you'll notice I put Elohim in brackets there. And the reason that I did that is that's the proper convention to use when you're replacing a word in a text and you're putting something else in. And I replaced the word God with Elohim because we're not supposed to. Somebody brought it to my attention, and we aren't even supposed to let the names of other mighty ones come across our lips. So I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start putting in brackets the word Elohim or Yahusha, Yahuwah, whatever is appropriate. But back to the definition of enmity here. It's a state of opposition. And the example that he gave was the friendship of the world is enmity with Elohim from James chapter 4. Okay. So, we know, I'm going to go back for just a second, previous slide, there we go. And it says, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. So he's putting hatred, Yahuwah put hatred between the woman's seed and Satan's seed. Okay? Now, the important part of that is that we've got to look at the big picture here. And if we go over to Ephesians 6, everybody is very familiar with this, that our fight's not against flesh and blood. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So, and that's what we're up against now. And I could go in and tell you all the rest of this about putting on the whole armor of God. I think that's very, very important. But the point of this is to show that what we're up against right now, we're up against a hatred towards those of us who want to try to get right with Elohim and who want to lead others that they might get themselves right with Elohim. You know, and it's all laid out in His Word. We've got to learn to take that literal. We've got to not worry so much about, you know, the minutiae and having this piece of information that nobody else has got and all that. And keep all the pride stuff out of it. I believe the 66 books in their worst form can give you the salvation message. And I would love to learn all the Hebrew and all the Greek and all of this and all of that. But the thing is, I can turn around and throw the baby out with the bathwater if I'm not real careful. Now, the other day, I was on my Facebook, and a very good man. I like this guy a lot. I'm not going to give his name because I don't have permission, but he had this post up on the possibility of Passover being canceled because of COVID-19. I don't know. Commemorating not getting killed by a plague during a plague that you hope you're not going to get killed by is probably as biblical as you can get. And you can say, I have his name was down here, and or somebody's name was down here. This wasn't his name. And I don't believe that he was being facetious, or that he was saying anything about, you know, following man's systems and canceling Passover because they said to. But the thing of it is, we're coming into a time when we're going to have possibly the Noahide laws are going to be in effect. The Sanhedrin is going to be killing Christians and true believers, and you know, lots of bad things are going on, and we're going to be able to escape it by just doing what they say, you know. Now, people are going to try to justify in their mind, oh, Yahuwah knows my heart. Yeah, he knows your heart's desperately wicked and evil above all things, and who can know it? From Jeremiah, remember? So, we can't afford to lie to ourselves on what's going on here. We can't afford to lie to ourselves and say, well, I'm sorry, I just can't help it. I've got to work on Saturday. I've got a family to take care of. No, you don't. No, you don't. The Sabbath doesn't belong to you. You didn't create it. You don't have jurisdiction over it. You can't change the rules to it any more than you can change the rules to any of his commands. So, you know, but that's what we're going to be up against. How easy is it going to be, and how tempting is it going to be to come up with some kind of a convoluted justification to comply with the rules of man to forsake the rules of Yahuwah? Well, if you do that, I'm afraid it's not going to work so good for you in the end. Most of you probably haven't heard of the Nuremberg defense, but after World War II, they had trials for the war criminals at Nuremberg in Germany, and they were tried for their war crimes. Many of them said, oh, you know, I was just following orders. You know, it wasn't my fault. I was just following orders. Well, guess what? The Nuremberg defense did not work. Those order followers all hung. They all received judgment for their crimes. Just because another man told them to do it did not relieve them of their responsibility. Just because the beast system tells you you have to do something doesn't relieve you of the responsibility to obey Yahuwah and to help others to see that they have to obey Yahuwah. Now, I've been a bad watchman. I've known, I've been given a lot, and it's just been recently, the past 2 or 3 months, that I've been doing videos, and I should have been doing more all along. I should have been screaming from the housetops, and that's got me worried too, because I didn't. You know, truthfully I didn't. I made some feeble attempts from time to time to evangelize, but compared to what I should have been doing, you know, I should have looked to the prophets of old. I should have been shouting from the rooftops. And I am hoping that the time is short, or is long enough yet, that I can kind of make up for some of that I didn't do. Because, you know, I don't know how many people I might be responsible for not giving a message when I should have given a message. You know, that frightens me. That frightens me a lot. And that gives Satan some ammunition to use against me, to cause me to doubt whether or not I can actually be saved. And he does. He has. From 1981 or 1982, it's been a constantly in my face that, you know, well, it's too late for you. You're just too bad. Nobody could forgive somebody like you. You know, and man, I'll tell you, so many times in my life I've taken that and run with it, and I've just kind of given up and went right back into the worldly ways. And, you know, that all came from originally from an elder in a church telling me on Hebrews 6 that, oh, that doesn't apply to you. that applied to the Hebrew people, and we're not Hebrew, so that's not written to us. You know, the part about if you sin intentionally, and so I wrestled with that because it didn't set right with me when he said that. But yet I didn't question it. I followed a man. You know, he's the boss. He's the one that's got all the knowledge. Who am I? And I said, oh, okay. And I didn't take as seriously as I could have the consequences that sin brings upon our lives. And consequently, here I sit, and I'm basically a canceled person. The world is done with me. You know, I've not got a lot of use to anybody anymore. I'm 61 years old, and you know they're ready to put me out to pasture, where I had a pretty nice life at one time. You see, that's all consequences I brought on myself. I can't blame that on nobody, and I don't blame that on anybody. And I actually have learned to value that a little bit because I have the constant reminder that keeps me from just jumping back into all the lunacy again, you know. And I mean, I was in drugs, alcohol, depravity, sexual depravity, you name it. I've been involved in it. I've been involved in 2 abortions. I was the father of the unborn children. And I came up in the sexual revolution in the 70s, and it seemed like it was a pretty glorious time to be alive at the time. But looking back on it, it was horrible, the things that we were doing. And that was just accepted behavior. And then I look back to the 80s, the 90s, you know, so on and so forth. And it's been a bad time. I've often said that these end times are one of the hardest times to live in because depravity is in your face, you know, and they're teaching our children to doubt their sexuality, and that's just a drop in the bucket of the depravity. Anybody with an internet connection can have the most oh, I can't even come up with a word to describe it. Depraved is all I can come up with. Pornography with a couple keystrokes. You know, there's hardly any people that get married now that end up living their whole lives together. Too many children in this world, you know, only have one parent, if that. And it's just drugs and alcohol is rampant in this society, you know, so... And I was right in the middle of all that for so many years, and now all I just kind of do is look to share what I can share and hope that I can find the grace to save me from this cesspool, because I can't save myself. My only hope is in Yahuwah, through Yahusha, Messiah. And that's all the hope that any of us have. So, but I wanted to bring up this Facebook post, because how many people out there are going to just comply when they start telling us what we can or can't do with our religious practices? You know, how many people are going to roll over and try to justify, oh, well, that's just the way the world is now. What choice do I have? You have a choice. You can go to the guillotines and get your heads chopped off. Or you can burn in hell. Okay, that's kind of in your face, harsh. But that's the reality of the situation. It doesn't do me or you any good for me to candy coat this. At this stage of the game, candy coating it does no good whatsoever for anybody concerned. So, you know, it's time for us all to come to terms with it. Now, let's look at the Passover. Depending on what calendar you're keeping, the Passover is right now, it was, what, yesterday, day before, was a Passover. Today's a Passover. The 8th's a Passover. It depends on what calendar you're keeping. There's some ambiguity in the calendars, and I don't know. I don't know. I've been trying to figure out the calendars lately. But we're going to go back to our original thing of jurisdiction here. Exodus 12:14 is where we first hear of Passover as a command to keep it. It says, "Ye shall keep it as by ordinance forever." Now, clearly in the Old Testament, and even before Moses, that Yahuwah had commandments, statutes, ordinances, and judgments. And you can see that, I believe it's in Genesis 26 or 27, where Isaac is taking over and receiving his blessings and instructions from Elohim. I believe it's 27. I have to turn to it, but I'm not there, so... But anyway, at that point in time, we see that there was some Torah. There were some commands that were given, some instruction that was given to them. That's back way before Moses. Okay? And he said, this is an ordinance. Well, under man's system, we are to keep statutes, ordinances, codes. There's hundreds of thousands of them in this country. And they usurp jurisdiction over us, over men and women. They do that through some trickery, through this whole birth certificate fraud, through the First Testamentary Trust that the Catholic Church under Pope Boniface in 1302, I believe it was, put out, called Unum Sanctum, where he claimed the whole world for the Catholic Church and all the souls for the Catholic Church. Then there was a series of 2 more of these papal bulls, testamentary trusts, that was all brought together in 1666 during the Black Plague as London was burning, when they passed the Sedekah Act, and that put everybody lost at sea. So through that, really clever men have discovered a way to usurp the jurisdiction of Elohim, and they've started putting different laws, what they call laws, in place that they force others with the threat of violence to keep. Whereas in the biblical sense, it's pretty clear what we do. We do what unto others as we want them to do unto them. And even the philosophers, John Locke, in the 16th century, 17th century, came up with the concept of a social contract. And that was basically, I don't hurt you because I don't want you to hurt me. And that was carried further by Rousseau and I think Descartes and some others, and refined a little bit. But there's been all of this different reasoning as to how we should behave, and the biblical principle, as do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is really the best thing to live by. Yahusha came along and he simplified everything. He said, love Yahuwah and love your brother. And that's taking, he took that, he didn't come up with anything new there. He took that from something's called the Shema. And it's in Deuteronomy, is it Deuteronomy? Is it Exodus? It's Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 5. And then Leviticus 19 and 18. Now, when you go to the Leviticus 19 and 18, that's where it talks about loving man. And you've got to back up a little bit on that, a couple verses, and read it. Because it says, basically it says you're despising your neighbor if you don't point out their wrongdoings when they're, when they've done you wrong, or if they're disobeying the commandments of Yahuwah. So, the things that we've learned here tonight on Critical Thought, as we've gone through this, apply that type of reasoning, read this stuff for yourself, and decide, who really has the jurisdiction over you, over your life? Who do you owe allegiance to? That's what it all comes down to. We have to figure out who we owe our allegiance to, and then we have to be faithful to that allegiance. My allegiance is to Yahuwah Elohim, and through his son, Yahusha HaMashiach. Okay? That's it, plain and simple. There's no wiggle room there. Remember, he who creates a thing owns it, the maxim of law. Who created the Passover? Well, obviously, Yahuwah did. When he led the children of Israel out of Egypt, he gave them the Passover. And it was to be a memorial of what he did for them. So, who owns it? He does. When it comes to applying rules about the Passover, do we follow what man tells us to do? What a nascent Sanhedrin might come along and tell us, no, we don't do this, we do this, or no, we don't have allegiance to them. Our allegiance is to the one who created us. He owns us, he owns the Passover, he owns the rules, and ultimately, if we want to be successful in this life, that doesn't mean, living long and prospering. It means going into the next life with him covering over our sins and him allowing us to receive eternal life when we're so undeserving. I know I deserve nothing but destruction for the things that I've done. I am the worst of sinners. And, you know, I've just got to beg His mercy, do the best I can do from this moment forward. So, we already covered this. Who has the right to control the rule regarding Passover? There's only one person, the one who created it. And nobody else has the right to change the rule. Okay, 1 Peter 1, 18 and 19 says, knowing that you were not redeemed with corruptible things, like silver or gold, from your aimless conduct received by the tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Yahusha. And it should actually be Messiah, because that's what Christ is, the Greek form of the anointed, which is the Messiah. But here again, you can see that I boxed that in because I added that to the text. But with the precious blood of Messiah, as a lamb without blemish and without spot. And here again in 1 Corinthians, I should put one there, 1 Corinthians 6, 9 and 10. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, or the Ruach HaKodesh, who is in you, whom you have received from Elohim? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, glorify Elohim with your body. We have been redeemed, okay? And we were, in the redemption process, we were blood bought with a price. And that was the blood of our Messiah that was shed for us for the remission of our sins. That is a redemption. Like man today has a what's called a UCC-1 redemption process. And I'm still working on my non-UCC redemption process, but I'm to the point now that I think that's not nearly as important as understanding this right here, the underlying principle that, let me go back again, that I was not redeemed with corruptible things like silver or gold. And, you know, and he talks about our aimless conduct received by tradition from your fathers. No, we had no direction. I had no direction. But I was redeemed because the precious blood of Yahushua Messiah, as the lamb without blemish, was slain in my stead. So I don't have to be, you know, receive the death sentence. I have the possibility of eternal life, not because of anything that I've done or anything that I could ever do. And now I've got to start treating my body like a temple, which I don't do as good a job there as I should either. And I've got to realize that I'm not my own. I was bought. I belong to somebody else. And there's another principle too, that in the laws of man, see, there's a legal system and there's a law system. The law system comes from the Most High. The legal system comes from man. Legal and lawful do not mean the same thing, because there are many legal things that are not lawful. But because I was bought at a price, I am the property. I am an indentured servant to Yahuwah through Yahusha, through his shed blood. And that means in the legal system, a slave cannot be subject to somebody else but his own master. So when I talk about knowing who you are, when you can wrap your mind around that your master is the Most High Elohim and his son Yahushua HaMashiach, then they have no jurisdiction over you whatsoever. They only get their jurisdiction through consent, through trickery, through bullying, because they have armed individuals who are willing to come out here and do their bidding for them and come into your home and kidnap you and throw you in a cage. That's the only way. They usurp jurisdiction from Yahuwah. They've gotten by with it for so long that they think they're going to keep on getting by with it, and they think that their God, Lucifer, is going to save them. Well, they're all in for a rude awakening, and it's coming a lot quicker than they think. So, you know, do you want to receive the benefits of sin for a season, or do you want to present yourself as your body as a living sacrifice? You know, I mean, it's up to you. It's all about free will. And when we traverse into their system, we are using our free will. Now, it doesn't matter how much danger is hanging in front of us, how many threats there are, how bad it might look for us, you know, Yahuwah can bring us through all of that. Some of us are going to face some bad ends, I'm sure. And, you know, we've just got to put our faith there. And I look at Acts 7, at Stephen being stoned and how he's being palmeted with stones, and he's able to coherently talk about seeing the heavens opened up and seeing the Father and the Son. You know, so there's something going on there. You know, I've got to glean from that what I can, glean what hope that I can. If it's bad, he will make a way through it. He's not going to put anything on us that we can't take. There's going to be some kind of protection through this all. There will be supernatural protection for everybody who are his. Some are, there's liable to be a second Exodus. I believe there will be a second Exodus, but I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I've got no way of knowing exactly what's going to happen. I've just got to interpret what's going on around me as the things happen and take certain things as confirmation that his word is true and allow that to build my faith. You know, I've got to take other things that are happening as a warning that maybe I need to do something a little different. You know, because we have all these different feedback loops in our lives. We're getting all this information from all these different places. And, you know, the critical thought becomes very, 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 very important. You know, we've got to know how to disseminate between all of the information we're taking in. What's real, what's false. At the end of the day, I think King Solomon said it the best. And Ecclesiastes 12:13, when he said, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear Yahuwah and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." And with that, the slide presentation is over. Now, how do I close this down? I think I go Alt. Okay, now, that was pretty much the presentation that I had, but I wanted to take a look at this. This is Brian from High Impact Vlogs, and he just put this out a couple hours ago. But we're going to watch a couple minutes of this and just see how crazy this is getting out here.
All right, I want to thank Angela Clemens for bringing this to my attention. Let me ask you guys something. Are you tired of tyranny yet? Are you hungry enough yet? Are you broke enough? Is there anything that could happen in your life that would make you stand up with your family, with your neighbors, and rise up against every shade of tyranny? Is there anybody anywhere that has any pulse and any hatred for a violation of individual rights?
Now, notice how upset Brian is here. And he's getting more and more upset as the days go on. I've been following him for a long time. He seems to be a pretty good guy, and he really puts the truth out there. But what he's reporting on here is just incredible. You won't believe it. But he's to the point now where he's kind of calling people to revolt. And I believe we very well could be headed towards a revolt in this country. And I believe that that's meaning that there's going to be a real good chance they've got to cut off our communications, our cell phones, our internet, you know, put us on 24-hour lockdown. If lockdown comes, the power goes out, the internet goes down, the phones don't work, they might be rounding us up and throwing us in camps. I don't know. I don't know, but, you know, there's things to consider.
This news article says New Jersey couple faces child endangerment charges for coronavirus-defying party. The Lakewood couple had 40 to 50 people in their yard and now face charges for each of their kids. I'm not even going to read this whole thing, guys. That's enough. But I do want to play this.
And, you know, this is evidence of how ridiculous this is getting. And when you watch this little bit of this video and look at this man, this Governor Murphy, whoever he is, the arrogance of him. Who does he think he is?
And if this doesn't make your jaw just frickin' hit the floor, nothing will. Nothing could resuscitate a person who is not absolutely outraged at what you're about to see and hear. Listen to this.
We want to be very clear about what is essential. We want you to assume that everything that's not on that list is not essential. And that if you are a business and you make something, or you happen to be a business of any sort, that we didn't ask to be closed down, you got to have 100% work from home policies in place, and we expect people to stay home. And I would just say one more.
We expect you to follow our commands. If you disobey our commands, we, the ruling class, and our enforcers will punish you.
And there's the point I was trying to make in my video. They have usurped the jurisdiction where man thinks that they have the right to rule over man. And that's always dangerous, you know, because man is not righteous. And the only one that it is safe to have ruling over you is a righteous judge. The only righteous judge is Yahuwah and Yahusha.
Who the hell do these people think they are? This is outrageous.
A wrinkle on this is earlier last week we said if you're traveling around the state between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. and you're non-essential, we want you off the roads. We're basically saying that's now 24 hours.
A 24-hour curfew, guys. I'm going to play this back because you heard him correctly. You can rub your eyes and shake your head and try to wake yourself and get smelling salts all you want. This is our freaking reality, and we let it happen. We because of our apathy and our indifference, we allowed mainstream media to come into our homes and desensitize us, to distract us, deceive us, divide us, conquer us. We still have the mainstream media morphine drip sticking in our arms. We're all asleep because none of us are rising up. We need to get together. We should literally be so outraged we can't even see straight right now.
See, Brian is looking at this from a worldly outlook, and he's calling for an uprising. And there's a lot of people now that are doing that. So that danger is hanging in front of us also. And that's why I think that they might cut off all of us from each other as best they can. I've been saying for a long time to everybody, you know, exchange addresses. We may be back to snail mail, if that. So you need to have the addresses and the phone numbers of your friends. Don't rely on stuff to be on your smartphone or on your computer or the internet. You may be cut off completely. I'd rather have some kind of communication than nothing. And only Yahuwah knows what's going to come in the next month or two, how this is going to play out. We have no real way of knowing this. But I'm saying it's not looking real good right now, guys. And I'm hoping that I can follow up and I can continue putting out videos and continue with the foundational principles. But getting back to what we were on before, you know, all this about jurisdiction and knowing who you are. When you know who you are, you'll understand truly whose jurisdiction you're under. You'll understand that people like this guy right here in this video that Brian was showing us, those people are usurping authority. Authority they don't have a right to assert. The only way that they're taking that authority upon themselves is with the force of violence. They're evil, they're wicked, they're following their God, okay? They're following their mighty one, Lucifer, Satan, whatever you want to call him. And they're going to get their just rewards for it. But we can't, you know, lose track of our end goal. This is the end game, and we've got to keep our eye on the ball. We've got to do what we can do to make it into the kingdom. At this point, that's all that matters. Folks, things aren't going back to normal. This world is done being normal. And I hate to be the one that has to tell you that. But there is no more normal. There hasn't been normal for a long time. Is it normal for men to marry men and women to marry women? Is it normal for the elite to do horrible things to our children and to, I don't even want to vocalize it. It's just more than I can stand to even think about what they do to those poor kids for that adrenochrome, their drug. It's costing the lives of the innocents. So we're overdue for judgment. We are. Yahuwah has been very merciful unto this point, and he's given us all plenty of warnings. And you can't say, nobody on this earth can say they haven't been warned about their behavior. I've been warned about my behavior. I ignored so many warnings. I brought so many consequences upon my life that I have nobody to blame for my present situation but myself. And none of us do. None of us do. He's a righteous judge. He judges righteously. So I don't know what else I can do but beat a dead horse here. So thank you all for listening. And please like, subscribe, and share this wide, because the kind of the theme of my channel is turning into, you know, knowing who you are It is so important. If you know who you are, if you know you're a son or a daughter of the Most High Yahusha, then you have a chance. You have a chance to try your best to fulfill that role as a son or daughter by being loyal to him, by being loyal to his laws above man's laws, by sharing your hope with others, by helping others to see that man's way brings nothing but death and misery. You know, so people need to hear this. People need to see this, and there's not enough people out there that are giving this message. I've procrastinated for way too long, and I beg Yahuwah's forgiveness for that, and I pray that he will give me enough time to make up a little bit for my procrastination, but I don't know. I really don't know. Like I say, the feedback I'm getting is not good, so you all, Yahuwah bless you and keep you. I'm praying only the best for you. And thank you so much for listening.